All right, guys. So Democrats and the Kamala Harris campaign are really leaning in to this new messaging strategy, this new narrative that Republicans are just a bunch of fucking weirdos, right? With their hyper fixation on trans people and wokeness and women having control over their own reproductive rights and things like that. They're just a bunch of fucking weird little freaks, right? And I'm kind of conflicted on this messaging strategy. I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on this because, on the one hand, as a leftist, I would much prefer to have a presidential candidate who is actually focused on, broad economic left-wing populist policies that address material concerns of average working class Americans, right? Addressing healthcare and housing costs and childcare costs, even addressing the ongoing genocide in Gaza, things like that, right? But on the other hand, I also do recognize that most people are not as politically tapped in as I am or as many of the viewers of this channel are. And I do think that relentlessly hammering home a specific messaging or verbiage of your opponent can be effective in the same way that Trump messaging that Kamala Harris is, or that Hillary Clinton is crooked Hillary, or that Jeb Bush is low energy Jeb, or that Marco Rubio is little Marco, or whatever the case may be. I do think that this can be effective, right? And so to get to that point here, we had a recent advertisement that was dropped here on Twitter by the Won't Pack Down Twitter account. And let's just go ahead and watch this and come out the other side, and I'll give you guys my thoughts on it.
Us MAGA Republicans banned abortion, but that's just the start.
That's just the start.
If Trump gets elected, we want the government involved in all aspects of your sex life.
Way more involved.
Way more involved.
When you have sexual intercourse, it should be illegal to use contraception. No pills, no condoms.
Your genitals are reserved for procreation.
If you freeze 12 eggs, you should be required to have 12 babies, or else you're a serial killer. And I'm definitely not a serial killer.
Are you?
My son monitors my porn usage to make sure I'm not self-pleasuring.
Just like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. That's true, you can look it up.
Don't you think that's normal?
Yeah, I do.
It's normal for your son to do that.
You should have a family member monitor your porn use too.
Because pleasuring yourself is very, very naughty.
I'm voting in November.
I'm voting in November.
We're all voting in November. Are you?
Because what happens in your bedroom is up to me.
Is up to me and my son. Also, mouth stuff is a sin.
Okay. So first off, whoever was playing this guy right here needs a raise because this is, no offense, one of the creepiest motherfuckers I've ever seen in my life. And him delivering this kind of messaging, textbook, right? Textbook. Now, in terms of the substance of this, some of the things that they mentioned in there, like Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson having his son monitor his porn usage, that is real. Guys, that's a real thing that Mike Johnson openly admitted. Can we just pause on that for a second? The Republican Speaker of the House admitted that him and his son monitor each other's porn consumption. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Obviously, the underlying layers here are that Republicans, they want to ban abortion, they want to ban porn, they want to control your sex life in every way that they possibly can. I think that's a entirely fair attack against them, given what they have been saying over the last number of years. And these kinds of advertisements, I genuinely do think could be so off-putting to your average American that they could be wildly effective. So I think this advertisement, honestly, should be played everywhere, as much as Democrats can possibly, put it around the country over the next couple of months. So there you have it. That's one of the major advertisements that I've seen floating across my feed over the last couple of days. I think that Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, was sort of one of the first guys who began this narrative of Republicans are just a bunch of fucking weirdos and we're going to actually focus on, broad economic left-wing populist ideas, to present to the American people to create some sort of a divide between Democrats and Republicans. Now, I do have to add in here that obviously I'm not a fan of Kamala. I'm not a fan broadly of her agenda that she's running on right now. It's not as if I'm going to go out and campaign for her and knock doors for her or anything like that. But there is this weird phenomenon going on right now. And I think it's just a product of the comparison to where Joe Biden was just a couple of weeks ago, where let's just remember, guys, what has happened over the last couple of weeks. Joe Biden was insisting that he was going to be the nominee in November over and over and over again, even though the entire country witnessed that he was entirely senile, right? And he was insisting he was going to be the candidate. Then he ends up dropping out after an immense amount of pressure from donors, from voters, from establishment Democrat figures like Obama and, Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer behind the scenes. He ends up dropping out. And now with Kamala Harris, who really is not even remotely close to the strongest Democrat candidate that they could put up against Donald Trump for November, she ends up taking his spot, right? She's sort of anointed as the Biden replacement. And the energy right now, the vibes right now, okay, the momentum right now is genuinely unbelievable. I'm going to show you guys some polling here in a second in terms of how Kamala Harris has completely flipped the script on where this election is going. But I think that this is just kind of part of it, right? Is the fact that you have Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as the opposition candidates. And I'm not trying to be biased here. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. But these motherfuckers are so fucking weird, right? What are some of the main stories that we've seen from J.D. Vance since he was announced as the VP, right? He's got a monkey testicle problem. He's got a woman/dolphin search history problem. He's got a fucking couches allegation problem on his hands. This guy is constantly talking about people, Americans who don't have children, as being sociopaths, as being degenerates, as being a detriment to society. You have Donald Trump, who's going out there right now. I'm not even kidding about any of this, guys. You can look it up for yourself. Talking about electrocuting sharks, talking about insane shit, right? So the idea that Republicans are weird is like, yeah, they are. Like, they objectively are weird motherfuckers. Like, I don't know how else to portray that personally. Again, this is coming from somebody who is not a fan of Kamala Harris or the establishment of the Democratic Party. But I do think that ads like this, where you expose the fact that Republicans not only want to eliminate abortion rights in this country and have successfully done so since the overturning of Roe v. Wade with some of the Supreme Court justices that Trump appointed to overturn Roe v. Wade, and now it's been returned to the states, and you have these draconian policies that are being, put in place in these conservative states. Like, putting that aside, beyond that, they're also just weird in terms of where their priorities are. And so I think that this is somewhat of an effective attack, right? And so this has even made its way over on to Fox News. Here we got Jesse Waters, who actually conveniently put together a compilation here of Republicans being called weird motherfuckers. So let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this here.
Of having sex with a couch. Not on a couch, with a couch. It's a weird thing to do. And now they're calling him weird.
I don't think Kamala Harris is going to pick anyone as weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Frankly, J.D. Vance, just dumb Vance, is pretty weird.
It's not just a weird style that he brings. It's that this leads to weird policies.
They're just weird.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate.
More extreme, more weird, more erratic.
The agenda, the way they talk to people, the way they address people, it is bizarre. It's weird. It is weird.
Well, it's just plain weird. I mean, that's the box you put that in, right?
Democrats made up a story about J.D. Vance having sex with a couch and called him weird 150 times this weekend.
Well, yeah, he is kind of weird, right? This is a guy who, keep in mind, recently there was a story that came out about how a few years ago he suggested the idea that people with children, right, should be given extra votes for every one of their children, essentially disenfranchising, non-children having Americans. This is a guy who thinks that people who don't have children in this country are sociopaths, right, are a detriment to society. Like, he is weird. Like, did nobody see his recent clip in one of his first speeches after being anointed as Trump's VP candidate, which, by the way, is a reminder, Trump made that VP selection thinking that he had a slam dunk election against Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden drops out, and now he regrets the JD pick. We all understand that. But In one of his first speeches after being anointed as Trump's VP, he got up there on stage in front of a friendly Republican audience, and he tried to make some joke about how he drank a diet Mountain Dew that day, and how liberals are going to somehow call that racist, right? And ah ha 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 ha, I love you guys. Isn't that so funny? The joke this guy's a charisma void, right? He has no sauce in the tank. And this is who Trump chose, not because Trump thought that he would be electorally viable or that he would be a strategically beneficial pick, but because he thought that J.D. Vance would be a loyal lapdog for him. And now, J.D. Vance's previous statements are coming back to haunt the Trump campaign. And I don't know why somebody like Jesse Waters or on Fox News that they would run this kind of a compilation, but the compilation is kind of facts. Like, it's kind of true. Right? On top of being like an authoritarian threat and that they're totally in the pocket of corporations and billionaires, similar to many Democrats as well, let's be fair. But like the idea that they are weird is just a fact. Like these are weird people with a weird agenda, with weird hyperfixations on things that are not really a major concern to average working class Americans. They're weird motherfuckers. Like it's true. It is true messaging. And so now we get to this because apparently, J.D. Vance and the Trump administration broadly, or the Trump campaign broadly, are a little bit nervous at the fact that Democrats replaced Joe Biden with Kamala Harris as their leading ticket. So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of this first part of this CNN clip on J.D. Vance talking about Kamala Harris.
All of us were hit with a little bit of a political sucker punch. The bad news is that Kamala Harris does not have the same baggage as Joe Biden because whatever we might say, Kamala Harris is a lot younger, and Kamala Harris is obviously not struggling in the same ways that Joe Biden did.
So J.D. Vance is calling the replacement of Joe Biden with Kamala Harris a, quote, sucker punch, right? Now, I actually understand this kind of view coming from J.D. Vance or coming from Trump because again, Trump only picked J.D. Vance because he thought his opponent was going to be Joe Biden, right? And so now they have to completely shake up their entire strategy because Joe Biden announced that he was not going to be looking for re-election after the RNC convention took place, after Trump already chose J.D. Vance to be his vice presidential candidate. And so now they're in a really difficult position because they had already had this entire plan in place about how they were going to run against Joe Biden. And you can't really use that same playbook against Kamala Harris because say what you will about Kamala, and I have many different critiques of Kamala Harris with her record as a prosecutor, as a DA, as an AG, etc., her flip-flopping and not really believing in anything. I have many critiques of Kamala Harris, but she's capable of stringing together coherent sentences, right? She is not completely senile at this point. And so you kind of lost a huge bulk of what your campaign strategy was. And somehow Kamala has successfully been able to sort of dodge the connection to the Biden campaign or the Biden administration, at least so far, on some of these issues. So it's very interesting seeing J.D. Vance say that Biden being replaced with Kamala Harris is a sucker punch to the Republican party and strategy, right? And I've seen many different attacks that have been leveled against Kamala Harris. They cannot figure this shit out. Because believe it or not, some of the main attacks that you could reasonably in good faith levy against Kamala Harris are attacks from the left, right? I mean, I just recently listened to one of her speeches in Atlanta, Georgia, in my home city of Atlanta, Georgia. Some of the main things that she focused on were like this extremely right-wing border bill that Joe Biden was trying to get passed. That, I think you could attack her from the left. You can't really attack her from the right on that. You could attack her from the left on that. You could attack her from the left on her history, again, as a prosecutor, etc., in California. There are many different things you could attack her on. But attacking her from the right on one of the core issues that Republicans are trying to run on right now, which is immigration, it's like, that's not exactly something you can really do in an effective way if she's running to the right on immigration as a policy, right? So Republicans are in an extremely difficult position right now, to say the least. And so I'll finish off with this. Some of the latest polling data. Here from this Bloomberg Morning Consult poll. If you look at some of the swing states, now keep in mind, Biden was down in basically every single swing state. before he dropped out. So all swing states put together, Kamala is now +1. Arizona, Kamala is +2. In Georgia, it's tied. In Michigan, this poll says she's +11. Now, I don't believe that, but the fact that she's up by a significant amount makes a difference. Nevada, Kamala is +2. North Carolina, Trump is +2. Pennsylvania, Trump is +4. And Wisconsin, Kamala is +2. So we also have this here from Nate Silver that I'll point out before I end this video. He has the combining all of the different polls together and trying to come up with some sort of a statistical model. He says that Kamala Harris has a 42% chance, 42.5% chance of winning the Electoral College. He says that she's confidently going to win the popular vote. And you can see the projected electoral votes there, 263 to Trump's 273. Again, you need 270 to win. So very close. I mean, it's basically just like a coin flip now as to who's going to win the November election, Trump or Kamala Harris. When before, a couple weeks ago, a month ago at this point, I would have said it's basically 90% chance that Trump wins and Biden loses. Now it's a coin flip, and that's a pretty significant difference. So we'll have to keep track of what the latest polling is going forward. It seems like it's trending significantly in Kamala's favor. I don't know. You guys tell me, what do you think of Kamala's campaign so far? Not from even necessarily just your perspective as leftists, but just broadly as a strategic, perspective on all of this. It seems like Republicans are panicking because they really thought that they were going to be able to run this entire campaign against a completely senile Joe Biden. And now you have Kamala Harris stepping in. You got Trump trying to dodge debates with Kamala Harris, and Kamala basically going out and openly calling him out for that and challenging him to show up to a debate with her. So I don't know. I mean, they're in a really difficult position right now. If anything, I actually kind of disagree with this Nate Silver poll, given the momentum right now, as long as she doesn't completely fuck up this vice presidential pick and choose Josh Shapiro. I think that Kamala might actually have the edge right now. She may actually have a slight edge at becoming the next president, which is completely insane given how we got to this situation in the first place. But yeah, it's all very interesting. And, we'll see if this narrative of Republicans being absolute fucking freak weirdos actually plays a role and sticks in this election.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying